Greetings, Tibet House donors and patrons of the Man of Peace, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's life story told as a graphic novel. Now, today, in order to encourage you to support us more of you, through this wonderful website, I'm going to show a few pages which are taken from the early 60s, from part, I forget, 3 or 4, after he has escaped from India, from Tibet rather, to India, and he is beginning a number of things. He is beginning to take care of a huge 80, 100,000 Tibetans in Nepal and India, Bhutan, Sikkim, mainly at the beginning, and some go soon to Switzerland and to Canada, but still mainly there. And then he's also getting his own, furthering his own studies. Remember, he escaped. He was only 24 years old when he escaped. And so he's still studying himself. He wasn't just resting on his laurels. I'm the Dalai Lama, I don't need to learn anything. He's really working hard. And there are two levels that the pages we chose to show you today to inspire you. The two levels of things that he was studying are one represented by the Kalachakra, and two represented by the Shantideva's great teaching of compassion called the equal exchange of self and other. And so to begin with, to look at this page, this is the page of his studies, and I'm one of them. There are many. And also I might emphasize that these pages alternate in the story between what's happening in Tibet, the terrible things going on after he fled, and the whole massacre of Lhasa, and the uprising in March of 1959, and the early 60s, the consolidation of Chinese brutal control over the whole plateau and so on. So we don't ignore with that. It's not just all la land, but the pages I'm showing today have to do with His Holiness's spiritual development, which we're so respectful of and we're so thankful for. Anyway, here he is with his teacher, senior tutor, Kapche Ling Rinpoche, a teacher of mine also, by the way, and a wonderful man. And the two of them ordained me as a monk in my days of being a monk. 50 years ago, amazing. And anyway, he's talking with him about the Kalachakra and how he should study that, and also about Shantideva's great precept, because he sensed already that His Holiness would have a special connection with them. And His Holiness is studying there. And then there was a master who escaped and joined them in Dharamsala, named Kirti Tsenchap Rinpoche from Amdo. And actually, his area of Amdo is where the immolations are occurring nowadays, strangely. But of course, he left early in the 50s. Kirti Rinpoche did. And he was one of the few Tibetan Lamas to have the complete set of teachings and inspirations of the Kalachakra. But he was such a shy personality and so humble, he didn't dare teach it to His Holiness. He was sort of awed and whatever about His Holiness. So His Holiness got inspiration from his own visions of the Kalachakra. We have two of them illustrated here. And there was a teacher, another of his tutors, called Serkong Tsenchap Rinpoche, who, if you look at his face, he actually was the model for Yoda in George Lucas's Star Wars. Someone who worked for Lucas happened to go to Dharamsala and saw the extraordinary face of Serkong and used it as a model for the mask made for Yoda, the Jedi Master. And he was a kind of Jedi Master. But anyway, he therefore bridged the gap. He went to Kirti Rinpoche, and Kirti gave him all these precepts, which also involved a lot of text and a lot of transmission. And then he transmitted it to the Dalai Lama. So that's why this is what this page is about. And then the next one that I want to show you is where this is a big double-page spread. And this is the beginning of His Holiness's practice of the Kalachakra at a higher level. He had already given initiation and had already done the initial retreat in Tibet once. And usually you have to understand that Dalai Lamas and Penjen Lamas in Tibetan history, they'll give a Kalachakra initiation as a mass thing in Lhasa usually, or in Shigatse, once in a lifetime or maybe twice. And then sometimes to their own monks inside the monastery. But younger monks who are studying it and keeping the tradition alive. But they never gave it many, many times. But this picture here shows His Holiness in a dream of the female form of Kalachakra, whose name is Vishwamata, the Universal Mother. And he had this dream in which she whispered to him and authorized him, my dear one, you can teach this Kalachakra and you should spread it to the world. And even people who are not Buddhist, doesn't matter. They may not do the high yogas of the Kalachakra, but they can receive its blessing. And they can see that mandala, and it will plant a seed in their karmic evolutionary history that will be very, very beneficial for them. So he had this unique authorization, which his own teachers were a bit shocked and surprised about, which was to teach it many, many times. And here he's gearing up, and he trained his whole monastery, Namgyal Datsang it's called, that they began to rebuild in Dharamsala. This time they didn't have much infrastructure. And nowadays they have quite a good developed monastery in south of MacLeod Ganj in Dharamsala, and nearby where His Holiness lives. And there are hundreds of monks in that monastery, but they are specially trained by His Holiness to maintain all the apparatus of the cult of Kalachakra, the arts, the dances, the mandala making, a lot of very special things. And they have an amazing set of paintings of all the 722 deities of the Kalachakra. They have that in their place. And so here they are doing a performance just mainly within the monks. There's a few lay people attending down here. But this is not one of the mass initiations. This is one of the early ones done in the third lunar month. Every year they do it among the monks. And this is a marvelous picture of that. And it goes along with a great page which pictures His Holiness in full regalia as a Kalachakra master that he dons in the fullest form of the ritual. And in a way, His Holiness did also a lot of research in the Kalachakra, and he got Nyingma versions of Kalachakra, Sakya versions of Kalachakra, Kagyu versions of Kalachakra, even Jonang versions of Kalachakra, who are very good in the Kalachakra, the Jonangs. And so he sort of combined in his teaching all of the things. And here he's shown here with the mandala, the famous mandala of Kalachakra, and the various visions he's had of the different Kalachakra deities. And it's so funny. This mandala, this is the eastern, southern door, eastern door, southern door, western door, northern door. Colors of directions in Kalachakra mandala are different from other tantras. It's unique, Kalachakra, because it has to do with getting something done in the world, transforming the world into Shambhala. Someday, 400 years in the future, they say, and they're probably right, but I always think it should be 40 days into the future, personally, because of the way the planet is, but that we don't get what we want always. Have to be patient. Maybe for me, maybe it'll be 400 lives, I don't know. So that's the Kalachakra. Then, around the same time, Serkon Rinpoche, and I don't have the pages that show how that happened, but it's a marvelous story. Serkon Rinpoche told the Dalai Lama that there was a special oral tradition lineage holder from the Nyingma order, actually, coming from the famous Padro Rinpoche in Tibet in the 19th and early 20th century. This is around 1960-61. And there was a Lama called Kunu Lama Rinpoche, who was actually a Tibetan but Indian citizen born in the hills of Ladakh, which is ethnically Tibet but politically India, and who knew Sanskrit and English and German. Actually was a great Western scholar. And then also he was very learned in Sanskrit and especially good in poetics. And he visited Tibet for 30 years or many years. I know, but I've forgotten. And he received this special teaching, oral tradition teaching, and was considered by some lamas really in the know to be, but he wasn't a high Tibetan hierarchy lama. And he taught actually at Sanskrit University. By this time he had fled from Tibet early, of course, when the Chinese invaded. And he was a professor at Sanskrit University in Benares. But Serkon Rinpoche said, Your Holiness, you must go receive that teaching from him. Never mind, he's not one of the high lamas in one of the orders, but he has this special knowledge that you need, and you're going to be a great teacher of, and you're going to hold that lineage. So, okay, let's do that. So then His Holiness went to Sarnath, and he tried to find him. And he went and gave a talk at Sanskrit University, where there were some other lamas studying by that time. And this lama he didn't see, this layman actually, but lama, Kunu Lama Rinpoche. And so then he was, you have to read the graphic novel to know the full story, but eventually he pursued him and he got the teaching from him. He found him. He was also humble and running away from the Lama and from the government and the whole thing, the high Lama, But he got the teaching, and then that is the seed of his great worldwide teaching of kindness is my religion. The human kindness is everybody's religion. It's my real religion, and the way altruism and compassion, that he's made such a great message and universal responsibility of us for all beings, not only humans but all animals and the planet. And that's the seed of that great teaching that His Holiness, because of course he mastered the teaching, he realized it himself as it became the paragon of universal compassion, which he's reborn as actually, but he relearned it also in this life. Both. He didn't waste time. And this is a beautiful drawing that our artist did, inspired by the knowledge of that history, where you have here Maitreya, the future Buddha, and you have over here Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, a bodhisattva, but they're supposed to be bodhisattvas, but they're really Buddhas. And then Guru Rinpoche, the great incarnation of Hayagriva as a human in ancient form, who's an immortal, more or less. He's thousands of years old, lives in a hidden paradise on earth still, they say, and he was very crucial in transforming Tibet. He's like the St. Patrick of Tibet. And here you have Tsongkhapa, and you have Atisha, and then you have Nagarjuna, and Shantideva, and the Penchen Rinpoche, and the Kunulama Rinpoche, Patu Rinpoche and Kunulama Rinpoche. And all of those lamas through whom its oral tradition lineage came. And here is His Holiness receiving this from Kunulama Rinpoche in a very humble setting. And all kinds of things are said, and wonderful responsibility is put on him. And here and this is the last one we'll look at today. And here in the process of having received that, we show His Holiness, we imagine His Holiness having a vision. He didn't tell us, or we're not pretending, but whatever. But he does have it. He has it in his heart, of the great Shantideva, who who wrote the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, in which the precept of the equal exchange of self and other, and the true altruism coming from Manjushri, Nagarjuna, through Shantideva, down through Patu Rinpoche and Kuluna Rinpoche to His Holiness. And there's the young monk, maybe not quite 30 years old, receiving this in a vision from Shantideva himself. And we really love it. I'm thrilled. When our artists produced this, based on how we described everything to them and our script and the whole thing, but they became inspired, the people who did this, our artists. And we had some Tibetan artists. We also had some Westerners. And it's really, really wonderful, this vision. But on the other hand, I want to say, it's not that we're ignoring the worldly, wonderful things that His Holiness did during this time, because he, of course, being like having this Avalokiteshvara sensibility of universal responsibility and compassion, he could feel in his bones and in his flesh, he could feel the great suffering of the Tibetans in Tibet. Remember, early 60s, the Chinese communists were very, very angry after he escaped in 59, and they massacred a lot of people. Then they had thought reform, class struggle. They killed off a lot of aristocrats in prison, had a huge gulag. Then, Mao did a lot of his stupid thing all over China about, melt all the iron to beat England in iron production in local farms, and they cut all kind of trees, and they also ruined the farming for years. There was a huge famine. And there was a special famine in Tibet because the Chinese insisted on planting wheat, which leaches minerals out of the soil much worse than mountain barley does, and never was appropriate to the high altitude land of Tibet. And it then created sterile or barren fields for a few years, and there was a horrible famine, and hundreds of thousands died in that famine. And so we show that, we dramatize that, we illustrate that. And on the positive side, the amazing job His Holiness did as a 20-some-year-old CEO of a 80,000 person or more community of penniless, destitute exiles in a harsh Indian climate, which itself was a poor country then, still is, a lot of poor people, hundreds of millions in India, and rebuilding them, getting the Indian government to help them have schools, dealing with Nehru, helping Nehru defend the border eventually from Chinese incursions, and building craft centers for livelihood and getting them off road gangs where they were put by the Indians to, for a couple of rupees a day. Terrible, terrible suffering they went through in kind of first exile in India. But he completely restored that and restored the big monasteries on special reservations given in South India. And that was a huge managerial work, like a CEO, really, of a big corporation, but one without money. They had sent out a bit of gold from Tibet at some point when they somehow realized, his brothers realized they would escape, and then these were robbed they were deceived and lost it in banks in Calcutta, Sikkim, whatever. It's a murky story, it's still controversial even today. So they didn't really have money except what was given to them. And His Holiness, very happily in 2012, he received an honorary degree from the Templeton Foundation, the religious Nobel Peace Prize, sort of, that he received, and he got $1.7 million. And with that, he gave immediately $1.5 million to the Save the Children Foundation in England, designated, earmarked for malnutrition children and starving children in India, where there still are many malnourished children. And then people were really surprised. In the very acceptance ceremony and acceptance speech of this award, instead of using it for Tibetan refugees and for himself, he said, right away he said, I'm writing a check right back to the Save the Children Foundation here in England to use in India, because ever since these time in the early 60s, our children would have starved and we were starving, and the Save the Children Foundation have helped us so tremendously, and I've always wanted to be able to help them, but didn't have the finance. And, in a way, we still don't, but I want to set example, and I want to just do it with this money, which is like a windfall to me, but which I'm grateful for the honor and all that. But the cash, I'm giving mostly to the Save the Children, 1.5 out of $1.7 million, and $200,000 he gave immediately also to the Science Dialogue Institute, the Mind and Life Institute, who helped him arrange dialogues with scientists over the last 20, 30 years, which he enjoys and he feels is very important also, the meeting of Buddhist and Western science. So anyway, this is to give you all a taste of the joy and the feast that you will experience in reading and in owning this wonderful Man of Peace graphic novel, Life of the World, the Tibet's 14th Dalai Lama and the world's first Dalai Lama of the world, Ocean Lama of the world, Ocean Teacher of the world. Thank you very much, and please help us. We are most grateful. All the best.